Hello, and welcome to part 2 of my Alphabethon / July wrap-up. So, if you have not watched part 1 of my Alphabethon wrap-up, go ahead and watch it. I will link it in a taggy thing somewhere, and I will also put the link to it in the description below. Make sure you go and watch that, because I'm doing the second half of the alphabet this time, and I think it's time you guys went back and saw how many of the first half of the alphabet I actually did. So, I'm going to get straight into it. You will have watched the last one because I told you to, and you'll know the point. I finished on M last time. I went A through M, and now I'm doing N through Z, telling you what I plan to read, whether I read it, what I thought about it, and we'll just see whether I got to the end of the alphabet. So, for the letter N, I said I was going to read No, I Can't Even. Now, this was recommended to me by Robbie, and it's kind of a YA LGBT comedy book, and it's about a young boy called Noah Grimes who basically is a bit of a loser. He's a bit of a socially awkward loser who is trying to get a girl to kiss him because he thinks he might get a bit more confident and he might get a bit more popular. And then his best friend Harry kisses him at a party, and suddenly he is confronted with the possibility that he is gay, and he thinks, crap, this can't be right. I've never known this. I've never kissed anyone before. Maybe I just liked it because he's my best friend. Maybe I'll like it equally as much if I kiss a girl. And it's about his stress of trying to figure out what's going on, as well as just dealing with his socially awkward excuse for life. And it was the best book I've ever read. I say that, it probably wasn't, but I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I've loved it so much that I read it via ebook from my library, and I've actually put the physical book on my wish list so that my family can get it before my birthday. In addition to that, I loved it so much that I read the sequel, which is Noah Could Never. I am doing an Alphabethon. I am reading 26 books for the damn alphabet, and I read the sequel, which was an additional book because it couldn't count again. So it was a sequel, but I loved the first book so much that I actually read the sequel, regardless. Will that have cost me in the future? Find out. But I read the sequel, and I'm just going to talk about the sequel because I also read it as part of my wrap-up. So the sequel was Noah Could Never, and it follows on from the first book, and equally as comedic, equally as socially awkward, and I loved it. I just loved the entire series. It is a duology up to now. There is a 2.5, I think, or a 1.5, which is kind of a short story, but the main series is a duology, and I'm really sad that it's over and I want more. I really do. But I loved it. I gave them both 5 stars. I really did. It was one of the best book series I've read in a long time. So next, the letter O. I said I was going to read One More Lie. My God, this was stressful. I said I was going to read One More Lie. Then I left it near the end and I thought, oh no, I'm running out of time. It's a big book. I'm not going to be able to, because the book was 388 pages. And I thought, I'm not going to have time, so I'm going to switch it out. I think I switched it out with Oliver Twist at some point, and then I decided I didn't want to do that. Then I switched it out with Only Mostly Devastated, which stressed me out as well. In the end, I went back to One More Lie. And this story follows a young woman who has been released from prison and given a new identity because when she was 10 years old, she was involved in the murder of a young child. And the story is about her kind of getting flashbacks to that event whilst trying to navigate her new life. And she doesn't actually remember what happened that day. And the story just goes from there. Overall, I really enjoyed this story. I gave it a 3.5. Because I felt as though whilst the story was good, there were times, like I think I got about 250 pages into this book before any sort of thrill came into it. And as much as I enjoyed it, like I got through the first 250 pages quite quickly. I feel as though not much happened. The story kind of sets itself out as it takes you back to that event. You have chapters on what happened in that event, and then it takes you back to her life and how she's living now. And I really enjoyed the previous ones where it was what happened that day. I thought it was really thrilling, really tense, because you're like, oh, what's going to happen? Did she do it? Did someone else do it? Was she framed? Because she can't remember anything. So you're like, oh crap, what's going to happen? And then her present day thing was just about her going to therapy, her getting a job, and her basically dealing with this new identity. And I was like, I don't really care about that. Take me back. I want to know what's happening. And it wasn't thrilling enough. I enjoyed the ending. I thought it was good. I didn't love it, but I thought it was good. So in the end, I gave this a 3.5 star rating. And I'm okay with that. So, for the letter P, I said I was going to read The Pale Horse by Agatha Christie. And I did. I read The Pale Horse. I thought it was okay. I didn't love it. I struggled to get into the story at first. Once I was into the story, I was ready to carry on, and I enjoyed it more then. But this is a 208 page book, I think. And I got to about page 130, 140 before I fully understood what was going on. And I don't know whether that's my own fault. I don't know whether it's because the writing style is just a bit old for me. I just struggled a little bit. So I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I'm reading more Agatha Christie. I enjoyed it. It just wasn't one of my favourites. So after P is the letter Q. Now I said I was going to read Queenie for this by Candice Carty-Williams. And you know what? I read it. Go me. I read this via ebook. I actually very much enjoyed the story. I gave Queenie a 4-star rating. The reason it didn't get a 5 is because I actually didn't like the character of Queenie. I feel as though the story of Queenie was actually really good. I got to learn more about not only racism, but kind of like the casual racism, the unintended racism that's still racism, and kind of people's ignore it and it doesn't exist attitude. And it made me so angry to read, but also it was really recognisable from people in white culture. Like there were times I read it in the book and I thought, I remember someone saying that exact thing. And it was times, it was times where I sat there and I thought, I should have stood up to that really, but it was just one of those things in the white culture, you don't do it. And now because of recent events, I have tried to make more of an active approach and say, nope, this is wrong. I'm going to confront it rather than just sit back, because sitting back is equally as bad as doing it. And reading this book has really helped. The only reason I didn't give this book a 5-star is because I didn't like Queenie herself. I felt as though she was really self-destructive and really just daft. I didn't like it. There were times where I felt as though she was saying, oh, my life is really bad because all of this is happening, and I'm just sat there like, but you made that happen. Like, you caused that, and it angered me so much. Like, there was times where she got in trouble at work. Like, her boss told her off at work or give her a warning or whatever, but she walked out of work. She just left in the middle of the day because she wanted to go home, or she had to go to an emergency doctor's appointment that wasn't an emergency. And I was just so annoyed by some of the things she did, and I felt as though she was quite rude to some other people as well, and I didn't like her character that much. So in the end, I gave it a 4-star rating, which I still think is really good. I did just take issue with quite a key part of the book, which is why I didn't get 5. I need to readjust this camera all the time. So for the letter R, I said I was going to read Room 119. And I read Room 119. I loved Room 119. I have got a dedicated review for it, so make sure you check that out. But wow, I loved it so much. I was initially hesitant, I will admit, but I was wrong to be hesitant. It was an amazing book. This story follows a man called Dean who works in the trade industry, like the stock trading. I don't know what that's called, but he was a stock trader. And basically, he makes a mistake. He loses his job, and he is told to go to room 119 because they help people like him. And the story just goes on from there. It's one of those books where it's best that you go into it blind. It really is. But I won't go on about this too much. I want you to just, if you're interested, check out my review. It is spoiler free, so go and do that. So, for the letter S, I said I was going to read Safe by S.K. Barnett. This was an ARC book that I didn't read, and now it's been released. In the end, I didn't end up reading Safe. Bad mistake by me, but I didn't read it. I was at a point where I read... I left the letter S till near the end, and I said to myself, look, you might not enjoy this. It's a Kindle book. You might really struggle to get across the finish line. So... read a book you want to read. Read a James Patterson. Read something you know you can get through quick. So I switched it out with a James Patterson book. So I read The Store by James Patterson and Richard DeLallo. And this is about, it's kind of like Amazon. Like it's about a place called The Store, which is kind of taking over the world. It knows exactly what people want all the time. They have cameras set up in people's houses. They monitor people. And it's about technology taking over the world. Yeah. Now, with The Store, I gave this a 3-star rating because I felt as though whilst the concept and the idea of the story was really, really good, it really let me down. I expected something else from the blurb entirely. I felt as though it wasn't thrilling, and then the ending was just nothing. The ending was crap. I was so disappointed. And I think if it was written really well, it could have been a 5-star because the story was solid, but it just wasn't. So it got a 3-star rating from me. So for the letter T, I said I was going to read The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. Yeah, I didn't do that. I tried. It was awful. And it is actually my book club tonight whilst I'm filming. I'm filming this on... When am I filming this? Friday. And I didn't read it because I started and I hated it so much. I think I got about 50, 60 pages in and I was just like, I can't even do it. It was one of the worst books I've ever read. And I'm glad I DNF'd. In the end, I switched it out with The Exile. And I know I said in my TBR that I wasn't going to include words such as the as part of it. However, I was getting to the end, I needed a short book, and I wanted to read it. So, my rules. I read this. This is about kind of like a curse on a family. And it's set in Ireland. And it's a curse on a family that are going to kill the family members. And they start getting picked off in the way that the curse said they will, and it's about finding out what's happening there. It was all right. I didn't really like it, to be honest. I felt a bit let down by it. I gave it a 2-star rating because I feel as though maybe it was my own issue. Maybe people might like that more. It just wasn't for me. I just felt disappointed. So for the letter U, I said I was going to read Unbelievably Boring Bart, and I read Unbelievably Boring Bart. I gave this a 4-star rating because I actually really enjoyed the story. I thought it was quite solid. It did have a lot of messages in there around bullying and family relationships, as well as being on social media and apps all the time and not living a digital life. And there was some disability rep in here as well. I kind of liked all that. I just felt this had a lot of potential to get a lot of good messages in there. And I know maybe middle grade is not always... It's not always necessary to get messages in there, but when it has potential to do that, it's worth doing. And it just didn't do it as much as I would have liked it to. So I gave it a 4-star. It was good, but I'm now getting used to reading middle grades that have such strong messages. And even though it's lighthearted and fun, it gets a really important story and message across, and I love that. This didn't do that much, and I was a bit disappointed. But I really loved the story, so I gave it a 4-star. For the letter V, I said I was going to read Vanished by Danny Collins, and that was a story about the Madeleine McCann disappearance. In the end, it wasn't available, so I had to switch that one out, and I switched that out with The Verdict. Now, you may see it's a John Roscoe thriller. If you watched my Alphabethon wrap-up part 1, you will know that I read a book called The Hostage that I said I would explain why when I got into part 2. This is why. This was the sequel to The Hostage. So in the end, I switched out the house husband for The Hostage so I could read The Verdict. This story is about a woman that is attacked in her bed, and the kind of culprit is on trial and staying at a hotel where head of security John Roscoe is staying. And it's about him trying to figure out the truth because he can see something's going on in the hotel that he is working at. And it's a good story. I liked it. I thought it was fun. Gave it a 4-star. Next, for the letter W, I said I was going to read Ways to Live Forever by Sally Nichols. I didn't read Ways to Live Forever. Instead, I was reading at the end of June when I was 10, and I just kind of decided, because I didn't finish it in June, I didn't really get far into it in June, I decided to finish it in July and count that as my W book. So When I Was 10 follows the story of 2 young girls. One of them murdered their parents, and it follows them as adults, and one of the sisters is basically trying to live her life and get on, and their other sister makes contact. And it is about their life, them trying to move past what happened when they were 10. It was a really interesting story. I felt as though the ending was a bit lackluster for me. I felt like it was just kind of quick in and out, over and done with fairly quickly. I was a bit disappointed, but I really enjoyed the story so much, the ending just let it down. So I gave it a 4.5 rating. It is definitely worth a read, but I was a bit let down by the ending. So for the letter X, I said I was going to read the book X by Jack Croxall, and I did read it. And I was very happy that I read it because it was nice and short and it got it over and done with. But I didn't like it. I liked it. I thought the story was good, but I did have some issues with it. And it just kind of brought the rating overall down to a 3. This story follows a young girl who is basically locked in a shed and there are creatures trying to get in to kill her. And she starts to write a diary. And what we're reading is her diary. And it was quite interesting and I really enjoyed it. But I feel as though the issue was the story was only 30 pages long. And I didn't care about her character. I didn't care at all. I really had no interest. And that was the issue, because I feel as though if you're writing a short story, you need to make us like your character because you have less time to make us like them. And this story just didn't do that. And I did take issue with it. So because I didn't really care about the character, I dropped it down to a 3-star rating because I feel as though that's kind of what it deserved. Now, for the letter Y, I said I was going to read You've Been Warned by James Patterson. And I read it. This is also with Howard Ruffin. And I love this book. I will admit, I gave it a 5-star rating. It was one of the best books I've read this month. So this story follows a young woman who is kind of taking care of young children for this wealthy family, but she's also having an affair with the father of these 2 children. And suddenly she starts getting warnings saying she needs to leave, she needs to back off, and she decides to ignore them. And she realizes there's only so much time you have before the warnings will run out. And the story is really interesting, and it was not what I expected from it. This was kind of billed as a bit of a thriller. I kind of saw it as more of a supernatural thriller, just because this woman keeps having dreams and visions of something happening, and you don't know what. It's always repeating what's going to happen. Every time she takes a photograph, something has happened to the photograph. And it was kind of supernaturally ghostly. It was very interesting. And this is not what I expected from this story. I expected a run-of-the-mill thriller, and it wasn't, and I was so pleasantly surprised. I gave it a 5-star, and I loved it so much, and I would recommend checking this out. So, we've come to the last letter of the alphabet. We've come to the letter Z. I said I was going to read Zoo. I read Zoo. I read 26. I read every letter of the alphabet. I feel as though it's probably not a shock to a lot of people, but I did it. Like, I am amazed with myself. I read 26 letters of the damn alphabet. I finished the damn alphabet. Please tell me you're all proud of me. Otherwise, this was for nothing. Zoo is about animals taking over the world and starting to attack humans and get revenge for keeping them in zoos. And it's about a group of researchers trying to find out what happened. This was actually made into a TV series. I love the TV series, so I was really excited to read the book. This book was awful. I hated it so much. It was one of the worst things I've ever read. So much so, I gave it a 2-star rating. There was no character development. My favourite characters in the TV show weren't in the book. And I was bothered. It was just very much insta-love. There was a time jump for no other reason than to say, hey, we don't want to do insta-love, even though they did insta-love. Like, hey, we don't want to do insta-love, so we're just going to do a time jump so these characters can be married. And it was quite degrading to women. Not in an obvious way, but like, the main character of this book went to, I think it's like the French equivalent of Cambridge or Oxford or something like that. I think that's what they said. And it's a very prestigious French university. She's a scientist, and they kind of demote her to, she's a mother that has to go and take care of her child, and she's not allowed to be involved in the story. And that angered me. So I didn't like this book. I was really upset by it. So overall, that was 27 books, because I also read the sequel to Noah Can't Even, which was Noah Could Never. I then read Zoo 2, which was the sequel to Zoo, just because I just thought I need to get it out of the way. That way it's done and dusted and I don't have to see it again. This one was better. It's a lot shorter, but this one was better. I gave this one a 3-star rating, but I still didn't like it. It follows on from the first book, basically. That's all I need to tell you. First book was crap. Wouldn't recommend it at all. No. But I enjoyed it. And I did it. And that is officially it. I read 28 books this month. 28. 20 damn 8. I don't think anyone understands how proud I am. This is such a huge achievement for me. I did 28 books, 1 for every letter of the alphabet and 2 sequels. And I am so proud. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to everyone that has kind of pushed me to carry on and finish this, because there was a minute I didn't think I was going to. And thank you so much for Jade for also taking part in this with me. I couldn't have done it without like us kind of pushing each other to finish. I'm so happy. I'm so happy it's done. You have no idea how happy I am that it is over. I loved it. So if anyone who is running Alphabethon is watching this, I don't want it to sound as though I hated it. I actually really, really enjoyed it. I had so much fun, but it was a lot of pressure. And now that the pressure is off, wow. Thank you to everybody for pushing me to read. And thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you thought of this wrap up. Let me know what you thought of any of these books. Let me know how proud you are of me for finishing Alphabethon. And also 2 additional books. It's important to let you know that it was 2 additional books. And thank you so much. So I post every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, and then randomly throughout the week when I feel like it. And I'll just see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much.